Hey, thank you for watching this video. If you're watching this, that means that you're interested in learning how to play this game that I've created, which means the world to me. And so I'm really grateful for your interest in it and for taking the time to learn how to play it. I want to be concise in this video. This is going to be about a 20-minute tutorial or so. And I know that because I've written out a script walking through all the details. So if you see me looking down, that's what I'm doing just to keep us on track here. So let's go ahead and jump into it. The theme of the game is that you're out in the woods with your friends and you come to the sudden realization that there's a bear behind you and he's moving pretty quickly. Now you can't outrun a bear, but you can outrun your friends. So that's what makes this game interesting, because as the bear is moving towards you, you're trying to outpace your friends while simultaneously dodging tree limbs and roots and other tripping hazards that your friends put in your way. So the goal is to cross the line to safety by playing cards that will get your character through the woods before the other players do. You will play cards face down onto the card placement board, which has numbers corresponding to the paths where your characters are. So when you play a card onto the space with the number 2 on the card placement board, it will affect players in path 2 on the paths board. So let's just take a moment to understand some of the movement in the game. At the beginning of every round, each player will decide if they want to stay in their current path or move to an adjacent path. You make this decision based on the cards that you have in hand. Do you have cards that will help you? Do you have cards that will trip up other players? Or do you want to play a combination of both? Once you've considered your choices, players will commit to a path that they will move to laterally by writing that number onto the path number token. But don't move yet. After all players have committed to a path, the starting player will play their cards onto the card placement board based on the number that they wrote down, as opposed to playing cards based on the number their character is currently in. Then all players will reveal which path number they wrote down and move their character pieces accordingly. And now you will resolve the cards that are played. This order is very important. And if you're confused already, that's okay, because it's not supposed to make sense totally yet. And it will make more sense by the end. And I would suggest rewatching this video after you have played a couple of rounds, because it takes a little bit of time to get into the rhythm of the steps, into understanding how your characters move, and also the bluffing and predicting aspect of the game. So once you do that, it will feel much more seamless. I think that the most helpful place to go from here is to explain each type of card. So the majority of the cards will be moving character pieces either forward or backwards. The cards that move players forwards have a plus sign on them, and they're in a blue font. Okay? The cards that move players backwards are in a red font, and they have a little minus sign on them. And in both of these cards, they have two categories. You have cards that affect the whole path, which means that this will affect every player in the path. And then you have cards that will affect only individuals in the path. So for the positive whole path card, everyone in the path that this is played onto will get to move forward the specified amount of spaces. So this one is +2. There's also a +1. For the positive individual card, only the player who played that card will benefit from it. So they will get to move forward 1 space in this example. For the negative whole path card, everyone in that path that this is played onto will move backward the specified amount of spaces. And there's a -1 and a -2. Now these two cards, the negative individual in front and behind, these are a little bit harder to understand. So I'll try and take some time to explain them. The negative individual front and behind cards are relative to your character's position on the board after they have moved to their new spot for the round. So you can use the cheesy artwork here in the picture to help you understand what's happening. So For this card, you are the character playing or throwing the rock, and your objective is to hit a player who is immediately in front of you with the rock, so that trips them up enough where they would be moving back, in this case, 3 spaces. For the negative individual behind card, this creepy old man here is chopping down a tree, and the idea is that you are the one that's chopping down a tree in the hopes that it's going to trip up the character or the player who's behind you. So these cards only apply to the path that you're in, because the action is you're the one that's doing the thing. So they don't apply to adjacent paths. So you would never play an in front card or behind card onto a path that you weren't in. You would only play it on the path that you are in after you've moved to it. So let's take a look at some examples of this just so we can see it. So Hank here played a -2 individual behind, and Godfrey happened to choose the same path as Hank, which means he is behind him. So Godfrey will move backwards 2 spaces. But if Godfrey was on a different path, he's not considered behind him and would therefore not be pushed back. Now let's say Hank played a -2 individual in front card on his path, and Godfrey happened to choose this path as well. Hank successfully hits Godfrey, pulling him back 2 spaces. But if Godfrey were on a different path, it would not have affected him. So a good strategy is to pair your individuals together, because this card will help me and this card will hurt the person who's immediately in front of me. So you can play both of these cards on the same path. All right, so now let's talk about the special cases cards, beginning with our checkpoint or second chance card. So everyone is going to start with this card right here. And the idea for it, and it's dual purposed. So as a checkpoint, if you get far ahead on the board, it's smart to go ahead and play your checkpoint. Should you be tripped up enough to fall back to where the bear is, or even behind the bear, and meaning that you would be eaten and eliminated, you would instead jump back to where you had placed your checkpoint. If this happens, remove your checkpoint from the board. Because, like I said, you can only use your checkpoint once. Did I say that? I don't know. You may only go back to your checkpoint once. So if you have not played your checkpoint and you still actually have this checkpoint or second chance card in hand when the bear eats you, you may discard this card instead and then place your character 1 space in front of the bear after it has moved forward at the end of this round. The jump card allows you to access paths that you are not adjacent to. So for example, if you're in path number 1, but you want to move to path number 2, you must play your jump card on your turn face down, just like any other card. Where you place the jump card does not matter. You can put it in any available space on the card placement board. All that matters is that you wrote the path number on your path number token that you want to move your character to. So this is a great way to bluff. And then cancel cards. Cancel cards do just that. Here it is. They cancel. And they cancel all the cards that have been played onto one path. So whichever path this is played onto, it cancels all the cards there. So yes, this includes checkpoints, jumps, and T-bone stakes, which we haven't talked about the stakes yet. The only thing a cancel card does not cancel is another cancel card. If a checkpoint is canceled, that card is discarded, and the player who played the checkpoint does not get it back. Same is true for a jump card. If a jump card is canceled, that card is discarded, and that player just has to stay in the path that they were in for the previous round. And then the last card here is a T-bone stake. And this card will pause the bear for 1 round. And it's similar to the jump card in that it doesn't matter which path you actually play this card onto. All right, now that we have a basic understanding of how the game works and what cards are in the deck, let's get everything set up and ready to play. Every player needs a character piece, a path number token, a checkpoint or second chance card, and a checkpoint token. Shuffle all cards and place them within reach of every player, along with the paths board and the card placement board. You will use one more path than you have players. So if you have 3 players, you will use 4 paths. If you have 2, you use 3. If you have 6 players, you would use 7. You can use the card placement board to cover up the unused paths on the paths board. Now deal 5 cards to each player and place the checkpoint or second chance card in your hand with these other 5 cards, giving you a total of 6 cards in hand. To determine who starts the game, have all players roll the die. Highest roll gets to place their character onto a path on the paths board, and all other players will place their characters moving counterclockwise. Give the starting player token, which can be whatever you want it to be. This looks fun. Once all characters have been placed onto the board, you're ready to start the game. So first, every player must write the path number they want their character piece to move to. So you're going to write this onto your path number token. Do not let anyone see this number and place it face down. You can move your character to the left 1 path, to the right 1 path, or stay in your current path. If you're on the edge of the board, you may not wrap around to the other side. You can only move to adjacent paths or stay in your current path. Once all players have committed to which path they are moving their character to, each person will play 2 cards face down onto the card placement board, starting with the player with the starting player token. You will play these cards based on where you're moving your character to and based on where you predict other players will be moving to. So where your character currently is on the board isn't where your character is going to be, right? Because you wrote a number that your character is moving to, but you don't want anyone else to see that where you're going. So, so you're playing cards onto the card placement board based on that number that you wrote on the card, or on the number token, path number token. There we go. In 2 to 4 player games, you can only play a total of 3 cards per path. In 5 to 6 player games, you can play up to 4 cards per path. So they have a maximum. You can only play 3 cards on a path in a 2 to 4 player game, and you can only play 4 cards in a 5 to 6 player game per path. You may choose to only play 1 card or no cards. After all cards have been played, each player will now reveal which path they chose to move to and move their character piece accordingly. If 2 or more characters move to the same space, each player must roll the die to determine who gets to stay in the space. The player with the higher roll stays in the space, and the other player gets pushed backwards 1 space. If this happens at the very beginning of the game, and there is no space to go backwards, then the player with the higher roll gets to choose where to place the other player. If 3 or more players happen to choose the same space, the highest roll stays, second highest goes back 1 space, third highest goes back 2 spaces, and so on. With all character pieces moved to their chosen path, you may now turn over the cards, starting with those in path number 1. So let's take a look at a basic example of what this could look like. On path number 1, we see a +1 whole path was played. So we'll say Hank here gets to move forward 1. On path 2, there is a +2 whole path and a -1 whole path. So Godfrey only gets to move forward 1. Oh yeah, these guys have names, by the way. You'll get to know them. On path 3, there is a -1 whole path, but no one is in this path, so it has no effect. And on path 4, where we've got Charlie, there's a +2 individual, so he will get to move forward 2 spaces. You'll want to refer to the rule book whenever there's a question on the order that you resolve the cards. There is a specific order in which you will resolve the cards, and there will be questions about how that plays out. But I've got that written out in the rules, so you can refer to that. After resolving all cards and moving the character pieces accordingly, move the bear forward 1 space. I suggest waiting to activate the bear until after probably about 3 rounds, just to give everyone a chance to get off the starting block. Finally, pass the starting player token 1 player to the right, counterclockwise. This is the new starting player, and they will begin the round by replenishing their hand. Draw until you have 6 cards in hand. If you have a card that you don't want, you may choose to discard it in the place of drawing a card. So your options are to draw 2 cards, draw 1 and discard 1, or discard 2 cards and draw no cards. It is likely that you will have cards in your hand that you can't use or that you don't want. So it's actually worth having less cards in hand for one turn, because after the next round, you will be able to draw cards until you have 6 in hand. So don't be afraid to discard, especially in the mid-game. That applies also after you've played your checkpoint. So if you don't have your checkpoint card in your hand anymore, you will still draw up until you have 6 total cards. So there's an advantage in that sense to playing your checkpoint if you get to a good spot on the board. If you drew cards, let those cards and the other cards that you have in hand inform which path you move to next, and then start the new round. All right, so there's just a handful of rules here left, and then we'll be ready to play, okay? So if the bear catches a player who does not have a checkpoint or a second chance card, that player is eaten, which means they're eliminated. When this happens, the bear will pause its movement for one turn. So there's an incentive to pushing players backwards because it will buy you time, because then the bear won't move forward. If more than one player gets eaten on one turn, the bear does not pause for more than one round because it knows how to eat quickly. Now, once a player has crossed the line to safety, the bear will move forward 2 spaces every turn. It will still pause for a turn if it catches up to someone, but it's going to move 2 after that. And then the last thing is, how do you determine the winner? And is there a winner to the game? Yeah, there is a winner. Really, it's just anybody who crosses the line to safety. If you want to get technical and decide who got first, second, third, and so on, then the rules are that the first one to cross the line gets first. If more than one player crosses the finish line at the same time, then calculate how many spaces more they would have gone based on the cards that they played. So if a player would have crossed the line 3 more spaces, or exceeded the finish line by 3 spaces, and the other player would have exceeded the line only by 1 space, then the first player wins. If there's still a tie, even after that, then you're both the winner, and it's great. But in reality, there's only winners and losers. The winners are those who survive, and the losers, well, they didn't. They died. So that's how it works. In the unlikely case that there is only one player remaining on the board, no players have crossed the line to safety, all other players have been eaten, that player will say, just to spare him the further tragedy, will say that player won. And you don't have to finish the game. Or you could just keep on playing until you see what happens. All right, well, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this all the way through. I know this is a little bit more of a lengthy tutorial. This game is a prototype, and I think it works in a very basic sense, but I would love to hear your feedback. So whatever thoughts you have on this video, after playing the game, after reading through the rules, any of the feedback that you have, I would love to hear that. You can leave that in the comments, or if you know me, which is most likely if you're watching this video, then you can just shoot me a text. All right, thanks again for playing this. I hope you have fun.